Chapter 1. The Tin Box in the Rain. The October rain came sideways, tapping urgently against the attic window like a restless visitor who refused to leave. Harper Ellis barely noticed the cold seeping through the old Beacon Hill brownstone, her grandmother's house, now her quiet sanctuary, because she was lost in the rhythmic calm of restoration work. On the long oak table, a torn 19th century botanical volume lay open like a patient waiting for stitches. The room smelled of wheat paste, old leather, and vanilla, always vanilla, though Harper had never found the source. Her grandmother had baked, brewed, soaked everything in it. The scent remained like a ghost that wouldn't cross over. She leaned forward, brush in hand, and whispered, "Easy," as if the fragile page could hear her. She always whispered to the books. No one else needed to hear her voice much these days. A sudden clang from the far corner startled her. Something metal had tumbled off a shelf, cluttered with forgotten boxes and trunks. Harper frowned, set down her brush, and crossed the creaking floorboards. A small tin box lay on the woven rug. It was dented, army green, the sort used for old film or letters. Her grandmother's handwriting peeked in faded marker across the lid. H+N, 2015, 2016. Harper felt her blood go cold. H+N. Her and no. She sank to her knees. Her breath came shallow, disbelieving, as her fingers trembled over the latch. She hadn't spoken Noah Callahan's name aloud in 6 years, not since the night before he vanished. They had been together nearly 4 years, practically children in love. Senior year of college, plans for the world, his photography, her books, their future apartments and travels, and someday maybe family. They'd stayed up whispering impossible dreams until dawn. And then he disappeared. No goodbye, no explanation, no closure. Just gone. A ghost she kept buried under routine and quiet. She opened the tin box. Inside lay stacks of envelopes, dozens, each dated between October 2015 and March 2016, all addressed in Noah's unmistakable lettering, "Harper, my heart." But they were unsent. Beneath them, 7 undeveloped 35mm film canisters. Her heartbeat skittered wildly. She reached for the top letter, hands shaking. The first line punched the air out of her lungs. "Harper, I'm sorry. I don't know how to tell you the truth without breaking both of us." Rain thrummed louder, drowning out the world as the past, his voice, his laughter, the way he used to photograph her, even when she protested, crashed over her like a tide she'd never outrun. In her quiet attic, surrounded by books and ghosts, Harper began to read. And the life she thought she had buried splintered open. Chapter 2. The Man Who Never Came Home. Noah Callahan didn't know how to breathe in Boston anymore. He stepped out of Logan Airport into cold rain and the thick nostalgia of a city he hadn't walked in 9 years. Car horns echoed off wet pavement. Streetlights flickered across puddles. And for a moment he felt 23 again, carrying a backpack full of camera gear and dreams, hurrying toward a girl who smelled like paper and vanilla. He swallowed hard. Not now. This wasn't a homecoming. Not really. He was here for the gallery show that would determine the rest of his career. Investors, publishers, documentary producers, they'd all be there. His years in Alaska, Iceland, Patagonia had led to this. Still, his chest ached. He wasn't supposed to be alive for this. Back then, God, he remembered it all too clearly. The doctor's voice had been flat and calm. Aggressive, low remission chance. You should prepare your loved ones. He hadn't been able to look Harper in the eyes and confess he might not survive the year. He couldn't make her watch him die. So he vanished. He disappeared into the darkness of hospital corridors, experimental treatments, freezing wilderness where he trained his camera on storms and mountains because he couldn't bear to point it at anything human. Especially not her. He walked now toward the curb where a car waited to take him to the gallery. The driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "You here for work?" he asked. "Yeah," Noah said, voice low, rougher than it used to be. "Something like that." The city blurred outside the window. Trees shedding gold leaves, couples sharing umbrellas, families rushing out of restaurants steaming with warmth. Everything he left behind. Everything he told himself he didn't deserve anymore. He closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw her, Harper laughing on the college quad, sunlight caught in her hair like fire. Harper curled on his dorm couch reading. Harper falling asleep on his shoulder on the subway after too many late nights studying. He still carried every frame of her. He always would. And tomorrow night, at the gallery, the whole world would see the centerpiece he had never shown anyone. The Light I Left Behind. 7 giant prints taken in their last year together. His most intimate work, the kind he'd sworn he'd never reveal. But something in him, maybe the part still cracking from regret, needed to honor the only person he had ever loved. Even if she would never see it. Even if she had forgotten him. Even if she hated him. He whispered her name like a ghost. Harper. Somehow saying it brought him more comfort than pain. Barely. Chapter 3. Letters from a Ghost. Harper read until her vision blurred. The letters were, God, they were devastating. Confessions, apologies, love spilling through every line. He wrote from hospital beds, from the small Alaskan cabin he hid in during recovery, from the endless nights when fear ate him alive. I don't know how to tell you I'm sick. I can barely tell myself. You deserve better than someone who might not have tomorrow. I'm protecting you. That's the only way I can make sense of this. Harper, please forgive me someday. Her fingers trembled as she lifted another letter. If I survive this, if I ever get to come home, I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. Harper pressed a hand to her mouth, choking on a sob. Then she picked up one of the film canisters. He had kept these, filmed her secretly, tenderly, lovingly. Why hadn't he given them to her? Why had her grandmother had this box? Her grandmother. Harper froze. The tin box had been tucked near the old cedar trunk where her grandmother stored journals and keepsakes. Had Noah sent the letters here? Had her grandmother hidden them to protect Harper? Or to wait for the right time? Harper didn't know. Couldn't know. The grief of it, the waste, the lost years collapsed her forward until her forehead touched the cool wood floor. Eventually she whispered, I need air. She grabbed her coat and stepped out into the rain. Beacon Hill glowed gold through puddles reflecting street lamps. Her boots splashed quietly as she moved without direction, only emotion. She wandered toward Charles Street, past late-night cafes, past the bookstore with the squeaky door, past the jazz cafe where she and Noah once hid from a snowstorm and danced to a saxophone solo while the owner pretended not to watch. Every corner of this neighborhood held a memory, and now each memory held a truth she never knew. Noah hadn't ghosted her out of cruelty. He'd been dying. Harper wrapped her arms around herself. Rain soaked her hair, but she didn't care. She whispered to the storm, Where are you now? But miles away in a warehouse-turned gallery near Fort Point, the answer was unfolding. Chapter 4. The Gallery Before the Storm. The gallery buzzed with final preparations. Technicians adjusted lighting. Framed prints rested against walls, Alaskan blizzards, Icelandic waterfalls, Patagonian sunrises. Sharp, wild beauty captured through Noah's patient lens. But one room was cordoned off. The centerpiece, the secret. Noah stood alone inside, arms crossed over his chest, eyes fixed on her, on Harper. 7 enormous prints lined the walls, each almost life-size. Harper laughing in the autumn leaves, head thrown back, joy bright as the sun. Harper reading in a coffee shop, unaware of his camera, framed by warm lamplight and falling snow outside. Harper asleep on the subway, cheek against his shoulder, her hand curled into his jacket. Harper reaching out to touch a golden tree, her expression full of wonder. Harper studying in the library, her lips moving silently as she read. Harper lying on the grass, sunlight tracing her profile. Harper looking at him, right into the lens, unaware that the photo had even been taken, her gaze soft, open, full of trust. Noah's throat tightened painfully. He hadn't been able to stop loving her, not after the diagnosis, not during treatment, not during the bleak months when he thought the world wouldn't see spring again. Harper had always been his light, even when she didn't know it. A voice broke his reverie. "Noah, we're doing a lighting check." He nodded and stepped back. But he couldn't take his eyes off the final photo, the one that scared him most, not because she looked beautiful, but because it showed everything he had broken. Chapter 5. Collision Course. Harper didn't sleep. She couldn't. She read every letter twice, sometimes 3 times. She held the film canisters like they were relics. She paced her kitchen at 3 a.m., whispering half-formed questions into the empty air. He'd lived through hell, alone. Why hadn't she told her? Why hadn't he trusted her with the truth? At dawn, she walked to the Charles River, where fog clung low over the water like a silk veil. She sat on the wet wooden pier, knees to her chest. Everything felt suspended, like she was caught between the girl she was and the woman she'd become. She had built her world on quietness, safety, routine. She repaired what others had broken. She restored fragile things. But who was going to restore this? Her phone buzzed, a museum colleague reminding her of a morning meeting. Harper ignored it. She stared at the river until the early joggers passed, until the sun broke through the clouds in diluted gold. She whispered, "What do I do?" There was no answer, of course. But that afternoon she walked into a camera shop and placed the tin canisters on the counter. "Can you develop these?" she asked. The young man behind the register nodded. "Give me 2 hours." Those 2 hours stretched into eternity. When she finally returned, he handed her a thick envelope. "They're something," he said awkwardly. "You might want to sit down before you look at them." She smiled weakly. "Thank you." Harper didn't wait. She opened the envelope right there on the sidewalk. And when she saw the photos, his secret images of her, her heart cracked open in a new way. All those moments she hadn't realized he'd been watching her with love. Her world tilted. She needed time, air, space. But fate had other plans. Because 30 minutes later, while walking home through the back streets near Fort Point, she passed a gallery window. Inside, a giant print glowed under soft lighting. It was her, laughing in autumn leaves. Her breath vanished. A man stepped into view, adjusting the frame. Tall, broad-shouldered, storm-gray eyes, early silver threading his hair. A profile she could never forget. The world dropped out beneath her feet. Noah! He was here. He was alive, and looking at the image like it was both salvation and punishment. Harper pressed a hand to the glass, trembling. The rain began again. Chapter 6. The First Look After 9 Years. Noah turned, slowly, like he sensed her through the storm. Their eyes met. Time, space, air, sound, everything collapsed into silence. Harper stood outside in the rain, soaked, shaking, clutching the envelope of photos. Noah stood inside the warm glow of the gallery, his face pale, stunned, wounded. He moved first, pushing open the gallery door so fast it slammed against the frame. Rain swept in with the wind. "Harper," his voice broke, literally broke, cracked like the first thaw of ice. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare. He stepped onto the sidewalk, umbrella forgotten on a table behind him. They were inches apart. She whispered, "You're alive." He closed his eyes in pain, rain sliding down his face. "Yes." "Why didn't you—" Noah reached out instinctively, then froze, letting his hand fall. "I wanted to tell you," he said quietly. "Every day I wanted to tell you." "Then why didn't you—" Her voice trembled. His answer was a whisper. "Because I thought I was dying." The rain softened. The world didn't. Harper felt something inside her splinter. "You took away my choice." "I know," he said, voice filled with agony. "I've lived with that regret every day since." A tear slid down her cheek, mixing with the rain. Noah stepped back slightly, giving her space, even though it obviously hurt him. "Do you want to come inside?" he asked softly. "It's cold. You're soaked." Harper nodded slowly, not because she forgave him, not because the past could be undone, but because she needed answers. And his presence, God just seeing him, made her heart ache with something she thought she'd lost the capacity to feel. Hope, fear, longing, love refusing to die. Chapter 7. Truth Among Photographs. The gallery was empty now, closing hours passed. Lights glowed softly across photographs that captured storms and sunrises and impossible landscapes. But Harper didn't care about any of those. Her attention locked onto the room Noah had led her toward, the room filled with her. She stopped in the doorway, breath catching. "Oh," she whispered. Her images surrounded her, larger than life, her eyes filled with tears. Noah watched her from a respectful distance. "I never planned to show these," he said quietly. "They were just moments. You were my calm, my home, my light." Harper swallowed hard. "These are beautiful." "They're you," he said, voice reverent. She turned to face him. "Why now? Why show them now?" He hesitated. "My agent insisted on a personal centerpiece, something that showed intimacy, humanity. He found the originals in a box of my old film rolls, and he knew immediately." "He didn't know who I was?" "No one does." His gaze held hers gently. "I've protected you, even when I didn't deserve to." The silence stretched, thick with unspoken things. Finally, Harper whispered, "I found your letters." Noah closed his eyes like the words struck him physically. "You weren't supposed to see those." "Why did you write them if you never meant to send them?" "Because I needed to talk to you, even if you never heard me." Harper stepped closer, voice trembling. "Why did my grandmother have them?" Noah's expression softened with grief. "I mailed them to her. She wrote me back once, said you were shattered. I asked her not to give them to you unless I made it home." He paused, voice breaking. "But I never did." Harper pressed a hand to her mouth, body shaking. Noah took a careful step toward her. "If you hate me." "I don't," she whispered. He froze. "I'm angry and hurt and confused, but I don't hate you." Her voice trembled. "I've tried to for 6 years. I couldn't." His eyes shone. "Harper." She held up her hand. "I can't do this all at once, but can we start with the truth? All of it?" Noah nodded, voice unsteady. "Anything you want." And there, surrounded by the photographs of their past, they finally began to speak. Chapter 8. Stitching the Torn Edges. Over the next week, they met cautiously, tentatively, like two people learning how to walk again. They walked Boston's rainy streets, sharing an umbrella when the wind allowed. They visited her favorite late-night bookshop, where she showed him the quiet poetry aisle, and they whispered the way they had in college. They sat by the Charles River at twilight, legs dangling over the water, the city glowing behind them. Once, in her studio, she showed him how to repair a torn book page. He watched her hands move, gentle and precise. "You're magic," he murmured. She blushed. "I mend paper, Noah, that's all." "No," he said, eyes soft. "You mend what's broken." She looked at him, long and lingering, and something in his chest loosened. He told her everything now, the treatments, the fear, the isolation, the guilt, how he carried her letters in every country, how he never photographed another person intimately after her. "I thought about coming back so many times," he admitted as they walked through crisp autumn leaves. Harper's voice was quiet. "You already broke us." He nodded, accepting the truth. "But," she added softly, "you're here now." He stopped walking. She kept going for a step before turning back. He looked at her with something raw, vulnerable. "Do I still have a place in your life?" Harper reached for his hand, slowly, like testing a fragile page. Their fingers touched, and neither pulled away. Chapter 9. The Night They Stopped Running. The gallery was empty, except for soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. Noah had locked up after closing, but Harper stayed behind with him, lingering among memories printed in silver and light. She paused before the largest photograph, her laughing in the autumn leaves. "I remember this day," she murmured. "You made me lie in the pile even though people were staring." "You looked happy," he said, quietly. "You were always happiest in small moments." She turned to him. "I was happiest with you." His breath caught. "Harper," he whispered, stepping closer. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you, not for a single day." Her eyes shone. "Then why does it still hurt so much?" "Because I hurt you," he said, voice breaking. "But if you'll let me, if you'll give me the chance, I'll spend the rest of my life making it right." Tears slipped down her cheeks. He brushed one away, slowly, reverent, like touching the page of a priceless book. "Noah," he whispered, "kiss me." He hesitated only to search her eyes. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she breathed. He cupped her face gently, as if afraid she'd vanish, and leaned in. The kiss was soft at first, testing, trembling, two souls relearning each other. Then it deepened, slow, aching, full of 6 years of longing. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, she whispered, "Dance with me." Noah smiled, a small, hopeful, breaking open smile. He took her hand and led her to the center of the gallery. Under the glow of photos capturing their past, he pulled her close. They slow danced alone, swaying under the soft wash of jazz, their foreheads touching. Her head against his chest felt like coming home. His arms around her felt like forgiveness. And when the music faded, they stayed in each other's arms, not because they were afraid to move, but because they finally didn't want to run anymore. Chapter 10. The Light We Find Again. 3 months later, winter settled gently over Boston. Snow dusted the brownstones. Icicles glittered on the edges of old iron railings. And in Harper's studio, the scent of vanilla and old paper mingled with fresh coffee, Noah's new favorite ritual. He stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, as she restored a delicate book for a museum exhibit. He kissed the back of her neck and murmured, "You're going to make this one jealous. You're giving it more attention than me." She laughed softly. "Books don't take reckless photos of me when I'm not looking." He grinned. "I only take reckless photos of you when you're beautiful." "So, always?" she teased. "Exactly." Their life had changed, then slowly, then all at once. He traveled less now, or rather, he traveled differently. "Only if you come with me," he'd said. And she had. To Iceland, where they watched the aurora dance across the sky. To a cabin in Vermont, where they wrote letters to their younger selves and finally let the last of the pain go. But always they returned to Boston, to home, to the brownstone that now held 2 mugs on the counter, 2 coats by the door, 2 hearts learning how to beat together again. On the morning of their first snowfall living together, Harper set his camera down and took her hands. "Harper?" She turned, eyes warm. He inhaled shakily. "I spent years searching the world for something that would ground me, something that would make me feel alive again." His voice thickened. "But I finally know the truth. It was you. It's always been you." Tears filled her eyes. He cupped her face gently. "I love you. Not the memory of you, not the ghost I carried. You, the woman standing in front of me, the future I want, the home I choose." A tear slipped down her cheek. She whispered, "I love you too." He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the hope and gratitude and reborn joy in his heart. And as snow drifted past the windows like falling stars, Harper whispered against his lips, "We lost so much time." He smiled softly. "Then let's spend the rest of our lives making more." They held each other tight, surrounded by books and light and the promise of every tomorrow. Outside, the world was quiet and white. Inside, 2 souls, once broken, stood whole again, together, at last.